Welcome to the Embodied Business Show. I am so excited. I have a dear friend of mine and someone who I deeply look to for advice when it comes to men, when it comes to all things masculine, and someone who's also held me through some big stuff as well around this. So welcome, Sam, to Embodied Business Show.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah.
This one, when it came on my radar, I was like, oh, yes, absolutely.
Embodied Business. Yeah, there's been so many things that we've touched on, like in our private conversations, that I think a lot of women, they don't know or recognize, but also men don't understand or recognize how to hold. And I think when you're building a business in this way as well, it's such a big piece. So I want to explore all the avenues with you today, because I think a lot of us, especially as women in business, we don't look at how much our relationship impact our business. We don't look at how much our own inner masculine is impacting how we're showing up as a woman. So I think it's going to be great to ask the masculine all these questions.
I can't wait. Yeah, it's such a good, not even distinction. It's such a good dot to connect. Yeah. Because I know, speaking from the masculine side, a lot of men will not understand that their business, their life, is actually a feminine energy. And so when they think about it, like, they wonder if their relationship's suffering. Like most of the time, if a man's relationship is suffering, most likely there's other little things. His relationship to other things in his life is also a little bit off.
Elaborate a little bit for me on that, because that's really interesting.
So life is a feminine energy. Like life force of the planet, of the world, of everything we do is a very feminine energy. And meaning that it's very much like, if you look at nature, like it appears out of control and chaotic because trees don't grow in a row. You know, but in actuality, it is contained by Father Time. You know, it is contained by all this masculine energy that lives around it. And so men will look at their relationship as they compartmentalize things. And we love to compartmentalize. We love this box, this box, this box. Great. Okay. Yes. And understanding that how we relate to one thing is how we relate to everything. So we know in our ecosystem, how you do one thing is how you do everything. Yeah. I say how you relate to one thing is how you relate to everything. Yeah. And so that it just goes, it's so true that, like, when I work with men on their relationships, ironically, their money gets better, their diet gets better, their business gets better, they feel better. And it's just, it's fascinating to see how these relationships are just all connected.
I love hearing this so much from a man's perspective, because this is what I teach you. You know my work, and you know that I teach this as well. And I always say, like, literally, how you're showing up in relationship is how you're going to show up in business and all things. So how do men receive it when you start talking from this concept?
There's a couple. One of them is like, oh crap. Like they immediately like, oh man, yes, I get it. And the other men are like, nah, like that's not it. Like I crush at business, but my relationship is, you know, the intimacy is terrible or something. And I'm just like, well, you might think you're crushing at business, but if you're not crushing here at home or in your intimate relationship, you're leaving a lot on the table on the business.
Yeah. And from my lens, what I'm hearing, and I think is where you're going with this, is like, this is where we get a lot of dictator leadership, where they actually don't know what their staff think of them, and things like that.
It's like they're a bulldozer, and they're trying to bulldoze intimacy in their relationship, and the thing about this is that all these things, like these shadowy, destructive things, actually worked for a period. To, like, a lot of men will say, like, they're hypervigilant, or they're these achievers, like they have this, like, the shadow actually kind of helped them in a way. And then all of a sudden it's not. And they're like, oh shit, what's happening now? And so there's an unwinding and an unlearning of, like, understanding, like, okay, that served me, and now I'm being called to a different level and I need a different approach. And it really is, it's more relating to the feminine and the inner feminine.
I love that.
Because the bulldozer, it oftentimes will result in success to a certain level. And then then you're right. Like, once the employees will be like, I don't feel good here. Like, I don't feel heard. I don't feel seen. Kind of like the relationship. Then the guy starts to think, like, well, I just bulldoze harder. This is not the answer.
It's so true too. Like, and I feel like women do this, like, as well, right? We do it from the masculine lens of, like, we've got to strive and push and hustle, and it just doesn't work. And so it's like, it's not like we've put this into such a neutral, like a gender bound position, but it's actually not. Like, we're all doing it. Yeah. Yes. I'd love to know, because from the woman's perspective, right? Like, the one thing that I coach a lot of women on is, like, you know, they've done their work and coming back into their feminine, and they're really trying to hold that. But what happens here? And this is going to be a really juicy question. What happens is like they'll be like, okay, cool, I'm really trying to stay in my feminine so I can create and be from this and da da da. And then the minute their man needs something or he's in his shit, they're like taken out, and then they go back into, okay, how do I fix it? How do I do this? How do I do that?
Yeah.
I would love to know from your perspective, what do men actually need in that time?
When they're falling apart.
Yeah, when they're falling apart or when they're a little bit lost, or, you know, like, or even just when they're challenged emotionally, because, you know, it's not considered normal for men to bring that to us.
Yeah.
But what is it that we as women actually get to do to hold men in that?
So one is this. It's definitely two-sided here. Yeah. There's a mother-son thing that starts happening.
Yeah.
Which is like, that's like that's the kind of the destructive, shadowy side of this whole thing. Yeah. Because that's what most things will slip into, is like the man will, instead of holding himself in the expression of his emotion or the expression of his pain, he comes in and kind of diarrheas the pain. And then the woman's like, I'll clean that up. And then also what happens subconsciously a lot of times is that the woman clicks on, the marker clicks on, the neurotag clicks on of, I have to do it all. Yeah. I have to hold it all together.
Fucking bitch.
Yeah. It comes from so many places, and it's totally understandable. Like, you know, there's been so much evolution in like women coming back into their feminine and getting out of the boss babe. And, you know, like there was this arc that happened many, many years ago where women came into like their place like in the business world and all that. And it got to this place where it was like, now where you got these masculine women, and a lot of men started to feel emasculated by that. Yeah. It's coming into balance now, but there is still this, women, when they don't feel safe, and if a man is coming in as asking for a mother, not a support or a place to fall apart, every man needs a place to fall apart. Yeah. And that the relationship should be that. Yeah. But it doesn't mean you get to be a puddle all the time. Like, you have to hold yourself in a way that the woman doesn't feel like she has to hold it all together. Mm-hmm. She can hold you in a moment. In when you're having a bad day or things are stressful, she's there to hear you and to hold you. But if you come to that with like a fix me energy or a save me energy or a mother me energy, that's when it's going to get haywire. Mm-hmm. And that's when the woman, the feminine, will say, oh shit, this man can't hold himself. He's not holding together. He has no backbone. He doesn't have any containment of his energy. He's not going to be able to hold me, the family, whatever it is. So the masculine within the feminine goes back into overdrive and kicks on and says, I have to be the leader of this household. I have to do all the containment. I have to do all the masculine things because this guy is not able to do it. Mm.
I'm really curious on this now because I totally agree. And obviously we've talked about how this has happened in my relationship, and, you know, I'm sure we're going to dive into that. But I actually had something just land for me, and this was years ago. Like, I was in a relationship and everything was like pretty great, like pretty great. But I just competed and I got out. And anyway, I started sort of moving my life more towards his. And he was like, I don't like that your whole life is about me and you're following me and doing everything my way. And from that lens of like, you know, the woman steps into the mother, what happens for the man if he has to like hold her when she's like in her shit and can't lead herself? Because we've been taught by society that the damsel in distress is a good thing. But my own personal experience is it's not. Yeah. And not from a lens of like, you can't be vulnerable, but from a lens of like, there still has to be leadership within the feminine as well.
From the feminine side. Yeah. Yeah. It's a similar concept. There's more, the feminine desires a different experience. The feminine relates or, craves a different experience in that. Yeah. Men are not so much about like, we don't necessarily need like to be witnessed, to be validated, to be acknowledged. Like we need a place to do it. And then the healthy masculine will be pretty quick to say, okay, I've expressed, I'm good. I'm going to stand back up, dust myself off. I'm back. Yeah. Containment, leadership. I got this. The woman gets to get to that point too, but they desire a little more witnessing, a little more holding, a little more validation, a little more acknowledgement. Their experience is a little more extended. And so the man, this is where the men's capacity comes in. And again, this relates to the business is going to do that. The business, whatever it is, will fall apart. And the man, how much range does he have, capacity does he have to let it fall apart, but not go past the containment and the boundaries? Right. So the man has to be really attuned to the woman and know, and this comes with time and it comes with, emotional intelligence, but the man has to know how far does my woman need to go where she feels complete and processed in that, so that she doesn't have emotional loops, or, Lexi talks about some of the neurotags. Like how long does she get to have this experience where she feels complete? And then the man reels it back in, says, come back, breathe with me, come back to center, and bring her back into her wholeness. Lead her, be with her in the depths, the storm, and then lead her back into the light.
Yeah, I love that. And I think the thing that, I see a lot for the women that I coach, and where I'm, I've had to work through it in my relationship to be able to get to that point as well, is like women automatically assume that once they're with a man who's got, personal development under their belt, that they're instantly going to be that.
Yeah.
What do you see from that lens? Like it's not always like that, right?
Yeah. No.
What do you think takes, not just like for a man to become that, but for a relationship to be able to hold that?
Well, it takes both people.
Yeah.
It takes both people acknowledging and having a lot of grace with each other.
Yeah.
It's so easy to have those kind of fallbacks. Oh, I'm doing the work. Or women love to see the effort of the man.
Yeah.
Like they just want to know that the man's moving and doing things.
Yeah.
There's a trap that exists there that can be like, look, I'm doing it, but I'm not, I'm talking about it. I'm thinking about it. I'm writing about it, but am I being it?
That is like been the biggest thing I think that we've navigated in our relationship, right? Because my partner, he's very hungry. He like talks about all the things, got the visions and all these sorts of things. And that's where I go, hold on a second.
Yeah.
Where are you being it? Like it's the presence piece as well. That's really important, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And it's gotta be, it comes back to, everyone wants the magic bullet here, like snap the fingers. Oh, I'm embodied.
Yeah.
It is reps. It is practice. It is being in it. It is like calling yourself forward. All that women love the most.
Yeah.
Is that if your man, say your man is falling, and this is in general, not your man particularly, but your man is falling apart, and what the woman desires to see, she will hold him. But if he never sees what's happening, if he never calls himself forward and understands what's going on in his own body, that's when he turns into the sun.
Yeah.
But because women the feminine are so like, we can be attuned and energetic and tapped in as masculine as the most. Women are always a little more. It's just, they're the oracle. It is the way it is. And with that, they tend to see things first. They tend to see things, feel things a little quicker. And so the sooner the man can get to the point of, oh, I see it, and communicate that to his woman, because in that moment, she no longer feels she has to hold it all together. And that's the embodiment piece. Is that when the man can talk, mansplain, do whatever he's doing to like theorize about what is going on in his life. But until he can recognize it in his body and say, oh, I see what's happening here. Okay. Then the woman relaxes and the polarity falls back into place. The masculine frame is returned.
It's funny you say that. I've actually got a really good example of where this happened in our relationship. This was a couple of years back now. But we were in it, like deeply in it. And it was kind of the start of like us walking a really big path in it.
Yeah.
But anyway, we'd got this letter in the mail saying that a bane had been done for his car, retro not being registered. And I was like, why didn't you register the car? And anyway, at the time we'd had a whole heap of big expenses. And he was stretched financially. I was okay, like with the business and what we were doing, and I thought everything was fine. But he was like, didn't want to tell me that he had another bill that he couldn't look after. Anyway, so he just brushed it under the rug and didn't think anything of it. Yeah. And 3 months later, he gets pulled over, registered. I lose my shit. I'm like, why didn't you just fucking tell me? We've got the money there. Yeah. Like, why not just say something? Anyway, me in my outrage of not understanding what was going on there, I just like was literally like, just fucking tell me, like, And then it was about maybe a week or two later, he comes home and he just starts crying. And I'm like he was in the shower and I hear him like, and I'm like, what is going on? Like, And then he comes out of the shower and he's still in his towel and he sits on the couch and he goes, have you got a minute? I really need to talk to you. And I was like, yeah, sure. What's going on? And he goes, and he was like, oh, you know, in it, like bawling his eyes out. And he's like, the reason I didn't register the car was because I was going to commit suicide. And I was like, instantly like, fuck.
Yeah.
Like, and this is at a time where my career was really taking off and he felt lost. He felt like disconnected. What was he doing with his life? And I know he doesn't mind me sharing this because it was a huge turning point for us.
Yeah.
And he was just sitting there and he's just like, I think in my head one day I was just going to drive the car off the side of the road and I'll never have to worry about it. And in that moment, I realized that, you know, I'd put so much over here on my career that I hadn't actually listened to what my man needed. And so just with him sharing that, he literally shared it and like I held him and we hugged for a little bit. And then literally the next day he quit his job. He fucking went and signed up for a real estate course. He like changed his whole career within a day of just expressing what was really alive for him. And he just took back his life in that one moment. Like this is obviously a couple of years ago now, but like we've seen the ripple effect. Like you're obviously close friends with him, you know what it's like. And, you know, I think when men don't feel safe enough to share that stuff, it's so fucking me. It's actually really hitting my heart now because like it crumbled me. Like I was like, fuck, what kind of woman have I been to not see that my man is like crying for help? You know? And the reason why I bring this up is because I know that, you know, we have a lot of women who have men who are struggling with this sort of stuff and they don't know how to hold that. They don't know how to be with that bit when it's really, really heavy. What would you say to like, you know, and it doesn't have to be the level of like suicide ideation or anything like that, but in those moments, like you said it before, like they really need the space. But I feel like where you said like they drop into the mother, like we talked a lot about that. How do we rise them into the king as a woman in those moments?
You just explained it in a way. And I would ask a question for you. And I would love for men to hear this. Is that, and I've experienced this too, like hold things in, shame. Just like, I'm so ashamed of this. I'm so ashamed of either someone's out achieving me or I'm struggling with money and I've been through this in my relationship. Like and luckily from the beginning, we were just like, we created a space where it's just like, we talk and we open. So, but what I would love for men to understand is that in that moment when Urbane did that, there was disconnect. There was like all kinds of going on in the relationship. And in that moment, everything softened. And I'll ask you, like, how much did you gain trust in him when immensely, right?
Yeah, it just made me actually go, that's where, like I felt his heart instantly.
And so, you feel him. Your trust, any lack of trust that had been there, and not so much trust of like cheating, but like the trust in him as a man in the relationship and who he is. Because he finally not only saw something, but he communicated to you that he thought he had to hide it because if she hears this, she will never trust me. I will be weak.
100%.
He said it. You shared it. You held him. He came back into his king because he let it out of his body. And your trust in him elevated immensely because you felt in the relationship finally had a point.
Well, it's interesting you say that because for months leading into that, I was like in, out, like, and we were like arguing, but over petty shit. And I remember saying to one of my girlfriends, I was like, there's just something in the background I can't see. And I'm not willing to let this relationship go until I know what it is because I know that that's not my man right now. And I was literally like, and when he told me and I was sharing it with her later that week, I was like, that was the bit. I could feel it. I could feel something was off with him. And I didn't know how to articulate it. And I kept saying to him, I'm like, what's going on with you? Like, where are you at? What, like, is this all you really want? And And so what I didn't know at first was I think the way I was going about it initially was shaming him further. Whereas I didn't actually know how to create the space until he built the courage for it as well. So it's almost like when you finally get the courage to be met in it, the space also gets created and vice versa. I know I've had another recent scenario where I was in an eye gaze with my partner and we're sitting there and I'm like, literally, I'm like staring at him, but I'm staring at him, interrogating him. And I'm like, I can't fucking see his soul. I can't see his heart.
Yeah.
And like, this is all happening in my head, obviously. And then I've just gone, I caught myself in it. Immediately, I was like, the reason why I can't see him is because I'm not letting him in.
Yes.
I'm like, you, penetrate you.
Yep.
And then the minute I just dropped and I like let him in, boom, it was like instantaneously.
You can feel the energy just woof.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's where so many women, they get in the work thinking that they know better than their partner.
Yes.
And they demise the man.
Yes.
Yeah.
There's I love that the part about finally getting to that point of him sharing it. So whether like you were he felt it as probably like attack because you were penetrating or infiltrating something that he was holding so dear. Yeah. This little like thing.
He actually would say to me, "Stop attacking me."
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because he was holding on to something, a secret, a feeling, and he's like, no, I can't ever show her. And so you did this, and finally, and you may not even know it, but something in your energy finally softened, and that gave him the permission to be courageous enough to say it.
Yeah, right.
And so it's a perfect example of like we have this like physical connection, the nonverbal communication, and then there's this even more subtle energy of space. Yeah. Of like, where's the space? And once the space gets created, like that conversation probably, and like you said it triggered a whole waterfall of like depth and connection and presence in your relationship that it was a foundation builder. Like literally a bedrock was established that day because your energy was welcoming and he finally felt you standing in, like, I can hold you. And he finally got the courage and got over his own bullshit and said, I need to share this. If I care about this woman in this relationship and myself, this has to be shared.
Yeah, and I think this is where a lot of men like, and I see it taught across the space a lot, is like, be transparent with her, but don't be vulnerable with her. And I agreed with it until then because transparency had gotten us to a wall between us.
Yeah.
I was like, yep, cool, you're over here, cool, I'm over here, cool, we're connecting, yep, good, check box.
Yeah.
But it wasn't actually like, hey, what's on your heart?
Yeah.
And I really like, as a woman who can I can do the masculine thing. Yeah. We all know I can, right?
Yeah.
But for me to be led like into my softness, it has to be met with softness. And I think that's where a lot of women and men both miss the mark. And one thing I constantly coach my clients on is like, don't expect him to meet you in vulnerability if you're not willing to go there first. Yeah. How important is it for a man to receive a woman in her mess?
I mean, it's everything.
Yeah.
It's like women have been told their entire life too much, too emotional, too chaotic, too sexy, too whatever.
Too bitchy.
All of it.
Yeah.
And so the mess is part of that, too messy.
Yeah.
And so women, and like you spoke to this too, like in that energy you were feeling with her Bane, like there's probably moments when you're like, I think I'm fucking crazy.
Oh.
Yeah. Like women, and this is the thing about when men call themselves forward is that women like, I'm not crazy.
Yeah.
And it's this thing that happens inside these women that is like, fuck, I'm not crazy. And then that creates another stepping stone of everything else. And so the importance of being like allowed to be in the mess is so important because it heals the wound of too much. And it's a collective feminine wound. Yeah. And these two, men and women, have these two collective wounds. Women, I am too much. Men, I am not enough. Yeah. So that right there, that whole situation with Urbane, he was feeling like not enough because he was having all this shame and suicidal ideations. And you were feeling like too much because you kept attacking him. Yeah. And so as soon as the conversation happened, both those wounds just died down because you all of a sudden felt like I'm not too much. I was just onto something, and he felt like I am enough. I can share this. Yeah. And so the man's ability to hold a woman in her mess and to witness it heals generations, like 7 generations of feminine suppression and being told they're too much and speak when spoken to, and like all the things we know about the disconnect between the masculine and feminine. So every time a woman feels the slip in the space, or the permission slip in the space to be messy, and the man actually doesn't go anywhere. One is the woman just stops feeling like too much, and the man becomes, I'm enough. Holy crap. I just held this woman in what I thought I couldn't do.
Yeah.
And so there's so much that goes on in that dynamic. And it's and not to say like, be messy all the time, but like, know that like, this is part of the masculine capacity. Is the gift of the masculine is like, I'm a yes to you. And it's not like, and this is where I got the term "I got you" becomes so big.
Yeah.
Because so many men will say, "I got you," ... as long as you do it my way.
I've been with one of those before. Yeah.
And the thing is, it's so like beautiful, because the man wants to, I got you no matter what. But the first like step is, okay, oh shit, you're not doing it. Like, and that's the man, that's the not enough. But the true masculine gift is like, yes, babe, I got you. No matter what the fuck happens, I've got you. And that's where the mess is allowed, and the mess gets to be healing. And honestly, every time the mess comes up, it dissipates the intensity, it dissipates the thing. And the woman feels less messy. She feels more held, and therefore more grounded and more allowed to be in her feminine.
And I think too, there's like a real element of safety. Like, I've had so many moments in my relationship that have healed previous relationships as well.
Yes.
Like, my ex would lie to me constantly and gaslight me. And I would be like, where are you? And he'd be like, I'm at home in bed. And he's literally, can see a Snapchat of someone else's where he's at the pub. And it was just like these constant lies. And so I actually thought I was going crazy in my previous relationship. It ended in domestic violence and all the things. Yeah. It was intense. However, when I came into this new relationship, I then had to be like, wait, where am I now? Like, it was like a whole new rewiring again. Yep. And I remember this one time, this is a TMI one, but hey, we're here for it. But we were intimate, and, Abane had literally just put his hands around my throat because he knew I liked it, but he did it a little bit hard. Full trauma response for me. Yeah. It just broke me down, and I just like shut off, and I pushed him off me, and I started crying, and I was trembling, and he literally just held me. And in that moment, like, it was like that mess that most women would just cower over and be like, okay, yep, do whatever you want. Yeah. But he was just like, if it's ever too much, you tell me. Like, I'm always here. Like, it's never a no. Like, it's never a yes when you're a no. Yeah. And in that moment, it was like so healing again. And I think this is where women tend to think that they just have to go with whatever the man's yes is. Yes. And like what you're saying is, and what I'm hearing is, men crave it, like your truth. Yeah.
100%. Yeah. And they crave opportunities to be the man they claim to be, or that they want to be. Yeah. And they love the opportunity. And it's not that you have to do the work. Like, this is the bottom line of all of this conversation, is both people have to do the work. Yeah. You have to be the person, the woman or the man that can allow this, that has the space for this. And this is the work that we do with Bridge and Extreme, is that we create those somatic bodies that can actually be a yes to this stuff. Yeah. And so, when Urbane immediately repatterns that, it's him co-regulating your nervous system, and you allowing him to be the presence, the king that he is.
Yeah. And I think too, like, for so many of us, we've been taught, like, and this is something that I talk about with a lot of my clients, and I know that you've also navigated with some of your clients and the circumstances that you've coached in, but it's like this whole cool girl thing that's come about recently, right? It's like, and I was talking to one of my clients about it, and I said to her, like, she was dating someone that we all knew, and I said to her, just because everyone knows him, it doesn't also mean he's the great person for you. You guys are great people separately, doesn't mean they're great together. Yes. And I think something that I see a lot is people who are like, I'm in the work, and then their wounds meet, and they think, but just because they're in the work, the wound shouldn't happen. Yeah. I'd love to talk into this bit, because I think it's so loud, especially with like the personal development community, spiritual community. Yeah. They're all like, everything's perfect. Boom, wound. Nah, we're done. You're not my sacred union. Yeah. Fucking da-da-da. Like, and this is the language that a lot of them use. Yeah. Like, not referring to her, she didn't use this, but I see it quite a lot. Yeah. What do you think it takes to actually build something where you can actually call it sacred union?
Ooh, such a good question.
Yeah.
All in. It's got to be all in.
Yeah.
Like there's so many, and I was guilty of this for so long, is that, okay, yeah, I love you and I'm here and we're doing this and we're talking about the future and maybe building a business. But there was something that was like, not all in. I'm not all here. Yeah. I know there's an end to here. I know there's an end to this, and what it was is that it was my fear that I wouldn't be able to sustain or hold that.
Interesting.
Yeah. So I knew, it wasn't that I knew the relationship had an expiration date. It was that my capacity had a ceiling, a cap. Yeah. And so I would sabotage. I would, and women can, if you're half in, or even if you're 99% in, she feels it. And then you feel it too. Like it's a felt thing. But when there's an all in, it's a no matter what. It's, Michelle and I talk about, we're team no back doors.
Oh, I like that.
Because we have,
my brain went somewhere else.
Yeah, I know. We've talked about this. When we first came up with it, we were like, wait a second, people are going to take that the wrong way. But what it means is there's no exit strategy.
Yeah.
Like neither of us are holding on to like, if you do this, I'm out.
Yeah.
And so the sacredness of that is, sacred is like, how it's an all in thing. Like it's like you drink a cup of ayahuasca in a sacred ceremony. Like there's no exit strategy there. No, you're in.
Yeah.
And like, this is the sacred unions are sacred ceremonies, and they're here. And like you talk about how, and I love that you brought this up because there's all this like we're in the work, like, and people get into the work for whatever reason, and they do it by themselves, and they have the monk mode and they go in, and then they meet someone else. They're like, fuck. I'm
easy.
Yeah. I'm not done. I need more healing. And then they exit. They figure out a way, either gracefully or not so gracefully, to exit the relationship. And then they go away, year, 2 years, whatever. Same thing.
Yeah.
It's this thing.
Yeah.
And so there's a knowing in a sacred union that it is, two souls, and Preston talks about this, out of 8 billion people, your two souls chose each other. Not to be perfect. I don't like that word. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I don't like the word perfect. Not to be like this, like no problem thing, like whatever you want to call it. But what you did is in that moment, you said, we've done all the healing that we can do on our own. And now that our next level is together, and how do we heal each other together? How do we hold each other together? How do we know that like, this is my person? I can look you in the eye and say, oh, I'm getting emotional. Yeah. I can look you in the eye and say, I am not going anywhere. No matter fucking what, I am not going anywhere. And that energy creates so much safety and trust, because I can't tell you, like Michelle and I are in an argument or a hard conversation. And for the first time ever in my life, I know that like, this is not going to be the end of us. Like it's just simply a conversation. It's an opening to more truth between us.
It's interesting you say that, because I have the wound of run.
Yeah.
As soon as it gets hard, I'm like, fuck this, I'm out. And it's been something I've had to work on our whole relationship, because it's interesting what you also said about the all in. Like Abane was the first person that I ever met where I wasn't looking for the end game. I wasn't looking at like, when does this end or when is this over? It was like, and that's why I chose to go all in with life with him, because I was like, I actually don't think we're going to ever break up. Like I don't feel that in my body. Like there's just nothing there. Just
not there,
And and still the pattern comes up of I want out. It hasn't come up for a long time, but every now and then it'll peer its head. Like I think it peered its head like maybe 2 months ago, but it was so quick. I caught it instantly and was like, this is here right now. And I don't want this to be the pattern.
Yeah.
And
that's
so
the big thing.
Yeah. It's like, you have to be able to intercept it, right?
Yeah. You have to catch and release.
Yeah.
Because I have the same one. Like my last relationship ended in 2023. Yeah. Like I was like, I looked back at my past 20 years. So I got divorced in 2004, and it was like, I mean, it's barely even, I can't even call it like my life really, because it was just so different, but it happened, but 2004, I got divorced. I was the one that left. So I'm free and clear. No grieving, no nothing. For 20 years, I had the same exact relationship pattern in I think it was 4 different like major relationships.
Wow.
Yeah. And it was run. It was everything the first year, amazing. We're deep in love. Like I'm all in, I'm full in. Something happens at a year where it's like, I get avoidant. And it's what it was is that I reached that capacity max where she's starting to see me in a certain way. And I'm starting to like, there's a responsibility kicking on, and I'm like, So what I do is I create chaos. And so for the about a year to 18 months, I'll do something, end up breaking up with her. She goes and either meets somebody else, or 3 weeks go by and I'm like, oh my God, I fucked up. Like, she's the one. And so I scramble and become this like amazing guy, get her back. And all of a sudden I shift into codependence. So I go from the avoidant runner into like fawning, appeasing codependent. And that works for a while. But then about a year later, she's like, no, you hurt me too. I can't get over what you did. Yeah. This is over. So now I'm my codependent, my fawning, my nervous system response is like deeply heartbroken. I fall in depression. Same pattern. And so now, and I told Michelle about this pattern when I met her. I was like, so, okay, here's the deal. Like, I have this pattern.
I love that you're like, this is not my shit.
Here's what I know is true about me. Yeah. And I told her, and it hasn't come up. Like it had, like to say it hasn't come up, that's not completely true. But I like, oh, there it is. It's the same thing you talked about. And it's like, if it was like a level 100 volume before, it's like a 3. Yeah. And so it's like, oh yeah, cool. And then it's like, you know what? No, I'm not here for that anymore.
But God, it's like such a level of maturity to be able to catch that in yourself as well. Like I know even just with the work that I've done in the last, like I used to coach relationships and then I got into one. No, real talk though. I still coached them for like 3 years whilst I was with Urbane. But the more you mature in it, there's just something that happens. Like the deeper you commit to that person. Yeah. Like even just getting engaged, like we've got a kid. Yeah. Right? You'd think that would be the biggest fucking commitment. But it was like when we were talking about getting married and all these things, I had all this stuff that I was withholding from him. Like all this stuff about like previous people and and like just stuff that necessarily didn't involve him, but I felt needed to be, so he knew all of me. Yeah. And so it was interesting. Once I shared all of that, boom, he was all in. Like, and so it's like these women expect to be chosen. They expect to be like all these things, but it's like, are you giving yourself full room to be chosen? Yes. And like, are you giving like, you know, just how you were like, I'm going to put it all on a plate. This is me. Like, you know, are you giving yourself room to have all of that? Because I personally live by the belief of like relationships are your biggest spiritual playground.
Oh, 100%. I love to use the word playground.
They are though, like because they can be really fun and they can fuck you up at the same time. Yeah, you can
fall off the hanging bars on your head. That fucking hurt.
It hurts. Yeah. But I think for like far too many of us hang it up as the be all end all. And, you know, I'm in a mastermind with a whole heap of women who are like, when I get my man, then. And like they're catching themselves in the process of this as well. Like I'm not saying anything that they wouldn't say themselves, but it's like when we reclaim that of like, it doesn't matter when they're there. It's like, can I catch myself now? Yes. It's so different. Yeah. Yeah. It's the
next level, like a visualization practice. Yeah. That's the thought. The visualization. What you're just talking about is the embodiment of it. So you're already doing the embodiment work before you get in a relationship. So therefore, when it happens in a relationship, oh, I recognize this, as opposed to like, oh, I've thought about this, but I don't, my body doesn't want to cooperate here. Yeah. And so doing that work leading up is so important because then it's not foreign when it happens.
Yeah. And I think too, this is where mindset lets us down. Mindset will never fucking serve you in a relationship. No. You can't outthink your way in a relationship.
Can't outthink your heart.
Yeah, no. And it's like that saying, I don't recall who actually says it, but the longest journey is from the head to the heart. Yeah. Right? And so it's like when we start to put that into like, well, how do I now move through life putting my heart first? Yes. What happens then? What's the biggest thing that you see with men when they start to move to that journey?
I love that you brought that in. I was just about to say it. Yeah. They close. Yeah. Like they'll have this, like I mean, it starts with there's something happens in life, addiction, death of a parent, death of a spouse, something major happens in life and men will start reading books and they'll start like speaking and maybe going to therapy. And then it's all up here. Yeah. Which is okay. I mean, if that's the first way it comes in, that's great. And it was for me. Like I was like, I could talk for days about all this shit. And I was like, but then something would happen and I'd be like, I'd go back in my little boy or I'd, you know, slip into some shadowy avoidant or like things would happen. And I'm like, what the fuck's going on? Like I teach this shit. I know this shit. I'm like, great, dude. Yeah. But are you it? Yeah. And so what happens is that, men are faced with rejection way earlier than women are, because everyone talks about like inner child work, 0 to 7, maybe 12, but like from 12 to 18 is when men are like, lean in for the kiss, shoot your shot, ask her to the dance, like ask, like go out there and get. And the women are, and they're still more in like, I'm going to receive and I'm going to be asked out and I'm going to be courted and chased and claimed and all that. And that's great. It's beautiful. But men, the woman that says no to a guy at 14, he's crushed for 10 years.
Yeah.
Because he's like, oh God, like what's wrong with me?
The amount of men I've coached from that perspective of like, oh, I didn't shoot my shot because this girl.
Yeah. And so what happens in that moment is 14-year-old rejection, close off. And then maybe slightly open back up, 16, maybe a relationship this time, she breaks up with me, close off.
Yeah.
All this, like this pattern of like open, close. It gets to the point, 25, 30 years old, where, you know what, it's just safer to stay closed.
Yeah.
Like I'm here, like I'm in a relationship, but I'm closed.
Yeah.
And the woman feels that. And so the biggest thing that men do is the biggest work of men is how do you remain open in the face of all the things that are going to make you feel rejected, shameful, hurt, unseen. Men get emasculated. Men want to hear you're doing a good job. That's it. Like if you tell your man he's doing a good job, he will do more good job.
Yeah.
It's a constant like build up.
Yeah.
And so that's the thing. Men want to close. Men learn to close because of the rejection thing that happens when they're teenagers.
Yeah.
And that's like right now, the inner teenager work I feel is way more important than the inner child work. And like for a lot of men, because the inner child work, a lot of them, like men get on the path, the inner child work's buzzword, like they start there and then they kind of skip the teenager and they go right to like, oh, in my 20s, I was a heavy drinker. Like, okay, but you skipped like
the rebellious teenager,
the angry teenager, the hurt teenager.
100%. This has been, like, as a woman, this has been my work for the last 2 years. Because that's the bit that's fucked me out. I did so much inner child work.
I know.
It's like that we're good there.
Yeah.
But now it's like, well, hold on a second. Who were you when you were learning how to adult in the world?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah.
And I love that you're there too, because I experienced so much rejection from the feminine, so much ostracizing from my friends. Like that was established early on, but then as a teenager, I did it myself. Like I chose a tennis career, which separated me from social settings and my peer group. And I grew up in a really small town.
Yeah.
So I always felt I kind of rejected myself, but because I was feeling so much rejection. And then it's, now it's like, how do I vote myself back in? How do I vote myself into wealth? How do I vote myself into business? Vote myself into my marriage?
It's interesting you say that, because I think about like my son and just how much aliveness he has, how open his heart is. Like whenever he needs a cuddle, he's like, "Mommy, I need a cuddle." Like he'll just come straight up to me and be like, "I want you, Mommy." Like that's literally what he says. I want you. And like you don't see that from men. And I look at little girls and I look at little boys, and I feel like little boys are so much more affectionate than girls. Like they're so available.
Yeah.
And then you look at how the world has shut them down.
Yep.
And I remember Bain's mum actually telling me this story about when he was a kid, he used to sing all the time, like everywhere. He'd just be humming and singing. Wow. And he got sent out of the classroom for it all the time. Wow. And I think to myself all the time, like, no fucking wonder he doesn't like to speak up much.
Yeah.
Because a 5-year-old was told, you can't make a sound when you're happy. Oh, wow. You can't speak up when you're happy. Yeah. And all of these pieces that are so loud and they impact who men are today. And we think we're doing it right by society, but we're actually like literally killing the aliveness in it. Yeah. It's
so true. It's like nose to the grindstone. There's so many things that play into this, and like being shut down. So shame or any kind of like that wound begins. What I've known to be true is that it begins when at a very early age, 0 to 12. We are trying to express ourselves, meet a basic need, something, being naturally ourselves, and we get met with rejection or humiliation for it. So he got met with rejection and probably some humiliation around his expression. Yeah. And so therefore, he's like, this is just who I am. Like, I must be broken. And he didn't know that at 5, but his little body did.
Yeah.
And then so I'll just be quiet, and I'll carry that with me until I'm 35.
100%. Like I hear him singing around the house and just being himself now. And every time I hear it, I'm like, oh, thank fuck, feels free. And
more of that.
Like,
yeah.
Like, but I just think it's crazy when you look at like how much society has taken that away from us. Yeah.
Yeah. They've just put like, it's fall in line. It's be this way. And this is the thing, like with the feminine too, about how like the feminine lost, like the feminine experience almost got lost in like the rise of the boss babe and all that. And now it's like, thankfully it's coming back, but there's just been this like such a dumbing down of our natural instincts and our primal expression.
Yeah. We've got something coming through that's a little bit juicy when you say this, because the one thing that I know to be true is like when the feminine is in her creation, she's a money magnet. Like
crazy.
Crazy
it's like a vacuum.
Money. Yeah. It's just like, give me all the money. Right. As a man who, and I see the way that you hold your wife and how you build her up and you create all this stuff together. Like when you see her in that space where she's just in her creation, what does that actually do for you? Because we talk a lot about how men want to see the messy, we want to see the chaotic and all that stuff. But when you actually see her aliveness, what does that do for you as a man?
Lights me up.
Yeah.
Like it's so like she becomes this like, and she's never not this, but there's levels to it.
Yeah.
She's always like, every time I wake up next to her, I'm just like, God, she's so fucking beautiful. What is going on? This is so crazy. And then when she's in this, like that place, it's like, she's just so alive and so creative and so on fire. And the truth that comes through, like you feel the capital T truth in that.
Yeah.
Like it is just, and she's like, it's just, and to be, it's almost like I can just like, yeah, babe, what do you need? Like, how can I push you more into this? How can I hold you so that this becomes the thing?
Yeah.
And so it's like, it's just, how do I create the space for this to expand? And the way she just like lights up, like it's a different human being when she's in that like really lit up place and just super, and she's coming after going through, like we went through this immigration process and it was brutal.
Yeah.
And so now like it's all.
She's an Aussie.
Yeah.
She's one of us.
Yeah, she is.
We love her.
Full on. Yeah. And so like now we're kind of on the backside of that where it's like the work we have to do is done. And she got kind of like, there was an element of her getting like kind of beat down by it. We both did. It was really heavy. Yeah. But now like I see she's like coming back into this aliveness and this creativity and this like spark and this sensuality that I'm just like, holy yes.
Yeah.
Like I'm just like, what can I do to provide space for more of this to exist?
Yeah, it's interesting you say that because there is going to be ebbs and flows in every piece. And I think a lot of women, they get good and then they're like, oh, like even this morning, like, you helped facilitate some of the stuff that I've done with Muse recently. And so like that was like a whole big like portal that opened up for me as a woman. And these last few weeks, Abane's just like, fucking let me bow down to you, like whatever you need. Like, and and I was saying to the girls the other night, I'm in the shower, I'm like got mascara running down my face where I'm like in there washing it off. And I didn't even notice he'd come in because I was too deep rubbing my eyes with the mascara. And I turned around, he scared the shit out of me. And he's just straight away like onto me. I'm like, oh, okay, all right, we're here. Where I'm like, okay, right. Like, but there's just been so many moments where it's like you can tell that devotion piece is there.
Devotion, that's it.
Yeah, and this morning I was like, I felt myself not in it, not in that newsy phase. Like, and he brought something to me. He was like, hey, babe, when you go to retreats, I make sure the house is really beautiful and you come home and it's clean. And I just noticed that you didn't hold that standard for me. Instantly, I was like, oh, but I had this and I had this and I had this and I had this. And I was like, actually, like I took a moment after I was driving. Right before this podcast, I sent him a message. I'm like, I'm really sorry I didn't listen to you. Like, it wasn't like, and it wasn't that I was pushing back or anything like that. But I just didn't hear him in what he was asking and requesting. Yeah. And it's so big for a man to like have those moments because in order for him to keep her alive, he also has to be boundaried as well. Yeah. Right. And like instantly it put me like, I wasn't in that, but him sharing that with me put me back in it. Right. So I'd love for you to share like, for a woman who doesn't know how to receive that from her partner or receive the boundaries or things like that. Yeah. What would be the best way for her to start to open up or to encourage it from her partner if she knows he's too scared?
There's so much about this dynamic can get like in the expectation, unspoken expectation game.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah. So, especially like it's more true in like the first year and a half of a relationship when you're kind of just still getting to know each other.
Yeah.
But it's okay to express, like, it's okay to say, it's okay to tell your partner, this is how I desire to be loved.
Yeah.
And so, and the men like have done the work. They understand that like he wasn't like giving you shit or beating you down. He was just like, I'm creating some containment and some culture of this relationship here.
It was just like, I'd like to come home.
Yeah.
And it wasn't messy, but it was enough for him to notice. You know?
And so that's him stepping into, he knows his responsibility is the containment and the culture of the relationship. And then within that, he creates the invitation for you to be you.
Yeah.
And for you to express. And so as women, like it's important to, ask, just say it. Like say, this is what I need. And as a man, it's the same thing. It's asking her, like we make up as men, like I should know everything about her. And the moment I meet her, if she asks for something, I fucked up. I missed, damn it, I'm a failure. I'm not enough.
Yeah.
Right. And so this goes back to the wound again. It's like the women feel like if they say, I need this from you, like that takes courage for the woman because she's been told all her life, you're too much.
Yeah.
Stop being too much. Stop asking for all these needs. You're too needy.
Yeah.
And the man hears that and is like, oh, I missed that shit. I'm not enough. And so to create a space where you two have created it, and this is another sacred union thing, to create a space where that conversation can be had safely and understand that we're not attacking each other. We are setting foundational bedrock for what we desire to experience in this relationship.
Yeah.
This is foreplay. Like
so is.
What just happened there with Rebecca and you is foreplay. You were probably like, there's an element of like turned on that happens when your man calls you in or steps in and be like,
fuck you, but also
like exactly. Yeah. And so just like when we can as individuals and together put these stories to bed, it opens up so much because communication is lubrication.
Yeah.
The best lubrication. And then it starts.
Tell about that one.
Yeah.
Well, I listen to this podcast.
It starts in the morning when you wake up. And maybe you have sex in the afternoon, maybe you have sex at night, but like it always is, how are we creating safety for each other through our communication and our open path of expression? One of the first questions that Michelle and I do in our check-ins is, do you feel fully expressed in this relationship?
Oh, I love that.
Always the first question.
How often do you guys do your check-ins?
We've gotten back on the track of every 2 weeks.
Oh yeah, nice.
Yeah. It's so easy to let that slip. So easy. Yeah. And so we also do a really good job of like, we're pretty much checking in all the time. Yeah. And that's no excuse. Like I've heard couples say that too. Like, we always have conversations, but when there's an intentional time where you set it up, you have like a little bit of an opening with some breath, you have some set questions that you're going to ask with like, intimacy, expression, spirituality, finances, business, whatever it is. Yeah. And for everybody it's different, but having that intentional time, it creates the safety and the trust. Yeah. To fully like clear the board. Yeah. And cause if you're just maintaining, you're basically like swatting away flies. 100%. Whereas if you're creating the space to keep the thing clean, the check-ins become like, they're not flies. They're just like, we're just like meeting each other. Yeah. It's also too, like you start to steer the ship, right? And it's like, I know for us, when we were traveling over here, there was like maybe I think like 2.5 months where we didn't do a check-in. We checked in with each other emotionally, but we didn't check in on our finances. We didn't check on, anyway, we were like, we haven't done a money date and like a check-in for a long time. So we sat down the other day and we just mapped everything out. We were like, oh damn, like just not from a bad lens, but just being like, okay, cool. We've spent like crazy amounts of money because we weren't doing the normal check-ins. And not that it's scarcity, but it was just like, the awareness point of like what we're going for and the goals, like over here, we didn't need to do that because it should have been directed over here. Yeah. And it's just those tiny little pieces of like, how do you tap back in to move forward without that? It shores up the leaks if there's any leaks. Yeah. 100%. Yeah. Okay. I want to steer this in a little bit of a business direction. Okay. Just purely to also bring that level of containment here because that's what we like to talk about here. Okay. But I'd love to know, like, you're coaching women and men on relationships, more so men, but you also coach women. Yep.
How does that, like, when it comes to running a business like that, how do you not take that into home?
Great question.
Mm.
A lot of it is integrity.
Yeah.
So if I'm coaching a man on, like I have a client right now and there's a tendency for things to divulge into conflict and combativeness. Yeah. And so therefore, like that's when that becomes like the expectation, then each person becomes conflict avoidant and therefore more conflict ensues. So the way that I best know how to keep the coaching and the home life separate is practice what I preach. Yeah. That's it. I mean, and it's not to say like things never go haywire. We don't have our things, but if I can maintain my practices, my integrity, my word, my actions, my, roles around the house, like whatever it is, when I can be the embodiment of what I teach, it creates, there's no need for me to come in as a coach in my relationship, because it's kind of like when you tell the truth, you don't have to remember anything. Yeah. It's kind of that concept a little bit.
I love that. Yeah. I love that. But I think that's so important too, right? Because we see a lot of partnerships and, that sort of thing. They try and coach each other. Yeah. We have a strict rule. We do not coach each other.
No coaching.
It's like, no. I'm like, go talk to Sam. Go talk to Preston. Go talk. Like, he'll be like, go talk to Lex, but the reason, like, it's so important to have a strong network around you. Yeah. Right?
Absolutely. Yeah. It's, especially like with like the things that we're doing and like, working together and doing all these things, and you can relate to this, is that it's so easy to get caught in your own little bubble. Yeah. And, like, this is why I'm going away this afternoon for 5 days in the desert with 80 other men to like be coached and to like work through some shit. Yeah. And so to have those external outlets, and Michelle's got a couple really close friends that she will talk to regularly, like 2 or 3 times a week. And just, and it's not like there's no secrets being told. Yeah. She'll share everything, but it's just, there has to be trusted allies outside of the relationship in order to keep the energy clean in the relationship.
100%. And I just want to caveat on that too. Like when you say trusted allies, it's got to be trusted by both parties.
100%.
I feel like, I see some people be like, oh, if my partner knew I was talking to you, it's like, that is never going to feel clean.
Yeah. Right.
Like.
If you're getting advice from someone like, I don't really like her, it's like, that's going to fuck everything up.
Totally. It puts leaky energy in your relationship. Like I'm like, if I've talked to someone about something that's happening in our relationship, I may not say to her, I said this, and this, but I will say, oh yeah, I spoke to such and such about what we're navigating and this is what I talked about and this is what we've come up with. Because it's like, and I have a strict rule as well. Those trusted allies, they also have to not be biased. Like
that's so good.
Like, because if I'm in my shit, I'm be like, he's this, he's that. Yeah. Not that I ever do that, but I might be like, oh, he's being a dick today. Da da da. Straight away, like if I call Jay, Jay, one of my friends, she'll be like, where are you being a dick? And I'm like, what? And she'll be like, it's not just him right now. Like, how did you create this too? And it's like, fuck you, but fuck you. Like, it's like, damn it. Yeah. So you have to have that level.
You got to have it. And that's why like, it's so important, like outside relationships now, like let's talk about how this ripple effect. Yeah. Like if this is how like your intimate relationship is the center column, the central channel. You have a central channel. Every human does. Yeah. Vagus nerve. It's the breath. It's the energy centers. It's all of it. The relationship is your chakras, the central column of your life. Yeah. And so how does that create space and ripple out to like, when I feel good in how I'm holding Michelle and being in that relationship, I'm more confident with my friends. I'm more confident like in the world. Like it all ripples out when I'm having the integrity and the solidness of this relationship. And that includes like, I keep friends around me that are going to do that. When are you being a dick? Like what's going on here? Like no yes men, right?
Yeah. But I think it's so powerful. Like, we'll constantly just like do like little check-ins of like who's around us right now. Are they serving us? Or, and we firmly believe in like, we've got a hand up and we've got a hand down. It's like we give to people who, and then you also learn from people, and it's like it keeps this flow happening. Yeah. But coming back to business again, I'd love to know another tiny little piece, because there's this rumor going around, right? I'm a business coach for coaches. So everyone's like, oh, that's how you make your money. But you're not a business coach. No. Right? So you can still be successful not being a business coach, right? Yeah. Like this is one of the things that I see a lot. And like, I know for me, I built my relationship coaching business to a successful point. And I know that you don't just get to be a business coach and be successful. Yeah. What are some of the key pieces that you would say for people who are like, I don't want to be a business coach. I want to coach in my thing, my mastery. What would you say you have to be willing to play with or focus on to be able to hold that?
Yes. To focus on and be able to hold that is the nervous system.
Yeah.
Get your nervous system right. And so that become like, give yourself targets.
Yeah.
If the first thing is like, build the business around the lifestyle. And then two, like, so bring it now into like actual business.
Yeah.
There's three main things that people want help with. Their physical health, weight, their money, or their sex.
Yeah.
So if you can operate in one of or all three, like relationships are
all three.
Yeah.
100%.
they're all three. Yeah.
Yeah.
But and they all play off each other. But if you can find a pain point in one of those three areas, and relationships are a big one.
Yeah.
Especially for people that have achieved a lot in their life.
Yeah.
Like it's the natural course of the way this thing has gone so far is that the achievers have let the relationship slide. And so now they've achieved and they've got the money and they've got the business and they're like, wait a second, like I go home and it's hell. Or it's like, it's chaotic and I don't like it. What's going on?
Empty.
Or it's empty. Yeah.
Yeah.
So many things. So, the first thing is like, I always, and this is relationship too, is that you have to become the person, the woman or the man that holds the thing, that can steward the thing before you get the thing. This is why lottery winners go broke.
Yeah. You know, it's 84%.
Yes.
I feel like I put that marker out all the time.
Within 2 years, right?
Yeah. Within 2 years.
Yeah. 84%. It's crazy. And that's because they didn't have the somatic capacity. Like their thermostat, their baseline was poverty or very low income.
Yeah.
And so they retract back to that. You will always retract back to wherever your body, your self-worth, your self-valuation, what you deserve. Like there's so many things that go into it, but you have to focus on the person that's going to hold that. And then, you do the ikigai, do that on your life and see where it lands. And then from there, like the lifestyle you want, and this is 4-hour work week. This is a lot of people talk about this is like, how do you build the lifestyle and then put the business in it as a puzzle piece? Not the business is not the puzzle.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that you've said all this because it's everything that I talk about in my business. But it's so true because like so many of us, we're like, we look down on, well, I used to do this, right? I'll speak firsthand. It was like when I wasn't where I wanted to be, I'd be like, well, why are they doing it?
Yeah.
Right. And it's like, well, are you actually the person that can hold that now? Can you be with that?
It's a sobering realization.
So much. I remember one day I was being coached by this woman and she said something along the lines of like, whenever you look at them, like, why have they got it? You just know that you'll never get it. And she's like, until you can celebrate that person, just know that it's not coming into your world because celebration accelerates things.
Yes.
And I was just like, I don't know how she said it, but it was along those lines. And I was just like, fuck. And it's one of the common threads that I coach women on now, that same piece of like, until we actually let it land for someone else, we can't let it land for ourselves either.
Yeah. It's the jealousy trap is such a vicious little cycle.
It's so vicious.
Yeah. It's rooted in victimhood.
Yeah.
Like beneath it all is a victim. I think if you're going to work on one thing in business, work on getting your victim. It's never going to go away, but getting it as manageable as possible.
100%. But this is the same thing in relationship too, right? It all shows up.
Yeah. It's, you're like, why me, poor me?
Yeah.
Like, oh, you're doing that to me. Like there's so many little insidious little sneaky ways the victim comes in.
Yeah.
That it's the saboteur of most things in your life is and honestly, humans have and this is an existential kink. Have you read that book?
I've heard of it. I haven't read it yet, so though. I really want to read it.
It's a great concept. So humans have this perverse desire to be a victim. Like we actually, there's a piece of us because there's such a payoff for it.
Yeah.
Like you're a victim of a crime. You're a victim of something, fraud, and anything.
We get attention, we get love.
Attention, sympathy, love, accolades, like, oh, poor you, like, oh, that feels so good.
Yeah.
And so this victim is like, sweet. I'll tell you a story. 2022, I'd been to Burning Man, and I had cancer twice in my mouth. 2009 and 2011, I had oral cancer.
Right. That's huge.
Yeah. And then 2018 I went to the doctors like 9 years later. They're like, you're clear. Yeah. Don't worry about coming back unless something major happens.
Yeah.
So 2022, I went to Burning Man for the first time. I left Burning Man, and like a week later, that place in my mouth opened up to a bleeding sore in my mouth. Oh. And so I was like, oh fuck, like this is like I think there's something wrong here. So November 1st and November 4th, I went to see 2 doctors and they both diagnosed me with cancer, oral cancer.
In 2018?
This is now 2022. So
this is in the time that I've known you?
Yeah. Yeah.
Holy shit, how did I not know this bit?
Well, it came and went very quickly because I recognized the emotional attachment that it was.
Actually, no, I feel like I remember a bit of this. Yeah. Okay,
yeah. So anyways, to the victim point here is that, I have a very strong victim in me because when I was a kid, I was born with severe asthma, severe food allergies, severe eczema. Like I used to choke on my food all the time. So I have this like victim thing that's like just a program that's there. Like I was a victim and I was being saved. And so I got a lot of sympathy for my asthma. I got a lot of like attention when I would go to the hospital, like a lot of payoff. And so I had done a lot of work on that, like really years and years and years of very like sober human, no plant medicine, nothing work. And then 2022, I get diagnosed with cancer. I felt that little kid, that little victim be like, celebrate. Like we get to be a victim again. And and it came back and like it was taking over. And I was kind of like, yeah, I get to like be a victim. And I was thinking like, oh my God, I need this to make an impact. Like I'm going to like go on stages and talk about cancer and like all this stuff. And so my victim was like, yeah, we get to the sympathy. And like part of it is like, oh my God, like I get a break from the grind and like all these things that the victim loves were happening. So diagnosed those 2 days. They were like, go do the biopsy. We'll get you on a chemo radiation track and all this. And I was like, that's not how it's going to go. I knew it was going to be plant medicine. It was going to be emotional healing, spiritual healing. And so I went to Costa Rica, sat with ayahuasca a few times, got deep into my shame and my victim. Like it showed me like, this is what's happening. Came back, got the biopsy done. 8 weeks later, cancer was gone.
Oh, you cannot make this shit up.
I know.
I've got a story like that too, around infertility. So I hear you.
The connection between the physical and the emotional is mind blowing.
Yeah.
And so what happened when I got that call that said the cancer's gone, I felt the victim get sad inside me. I was like, oh, we don't get to be a victim anymore. And so that like 8 weeks was like a massive purging of like everything that I was holding on to, the remnants of my victim story.
But it's like an identity you have to grieve, right?
Oh,
like,
100%.
I remember I would have been like 25, 26. I was crying on my floor, like I was alone, not in a relationship, struggling personal trainer, like thinking like, when the fuck am I going to get out of this cycle? Like, and I was literally like, everyone thought I was this big, happy, like she's got it all figured out kind of girl. And I'm on my floor on a Saturday night. All my friends are out partying. I'm trying to build my life and I'm fucking bawling my eyes out. And I just felt like an absolute mess. And I was like, I remember literally saying out loud, I just want someone to save me. And like, it was like, but the voice that came up, when it came up and I actually felt that emotion, I was like, oh, that's what's been fucking sitting there that whole time. Yeah. And you're right. Like I still feel her sometimes. Yeah. Like I've gone through a huge, like, case with my military career. And that bit's been like, yeah, we finally got recognition for the back injury and all the things. And then there's the other part of me that wants to disown it all. Like, how dare you let that take over you? But it literally took over my whole life. It's crazy. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And I love that you talked about the identity of it. Like, it's such the identity, like we love identity. Yeah. I'm Sam. It's like it's ingrained in us to identify as something. And to identify as a victim is a lot easier than identifying as a kick-ass business owner, a powerful relationship coach, whatever it is.
And I think too, though, I really want to go into that because for so many of us, we move through one relationship thinking that will be different in the next. Identity there. But it's like, what most people don't realize is like, in order to build that relationship, you have to grieve that previous version of yourself as well.
Yes.
Like you literally have to go through the realization of who you were, what you're holding, all of those
how
things.
It served you. Yeah.
Yeah. How do you find when you work with people in this, like, are most people resistant to that or are they pretty open to it?
Once you can connect the dots of the payoff and the freedom that's there, they're open to it. Right. But a lot of people, grief gets put in this weird thing. It's almost like a luxury item. You know how luxury items like, oh, I don't have time for that. Or, the grief is like one of those things where just there's something in us that it's going to consume us. And it is consuming. but it's more consuming when you don't look at it. Yeah. Right. And so people will think, I don't have time to grieve. Like I don't have time for that. So they just hold on.
Or they only think it's like when someo's died, I can only.
Died. They don't think about like grieving a person, a version of themselves. Like I had to grieve my addict. I had to grieve the child that got so much from the asthma, the tennis player, the professional tennis player. I had to grieve that when I realized what happened there. Yeah. And so grieving is honestly like, it's probably one of the most clearing processes that you can ever go through. Yeah. Because open grief or ungrieved things are open emotional loops. And open emotional loops are like, it's like having a tooth with a nerve exposed. Every time you eat, every time you breathe, it's like, yeah. And the grief is like that. You're always susceptible to a trigger, some sort of, like there's this stuck energy in your body. You're always susceptible to some sort of thing that's going to like send you into like in the middle of your business day, you're at a meeting and all of a sudden something out of the blue, boom. Oh, I'm in grief. Yeah. And then,
but that's the thing. It comes in waves until you actually heal it, right?
Yeah. And I think healing, oftentimes people put in like healing means done. Yeah.
If there's one thing I've learned is I'm still healing.
Complete and done. Yeah. And so I think a better term is relating. Yeah. It's like, okay, so the grief is like, and this is a big thing that I work with a lot of the men on, is that men bring the fear of pain or rejection into relationships. And so, and what they want is they want to exile that thing. Like, nope, I'm done, out, get out of here. You're not welcome here. And that forever will make that voice louder. And so, and anytime that we have something in us, grief, the feminine pain, the masculine pain, whatever it is, it's not about healing it. It's about how do we relate differently to it.
Yeah, it's like that old saying, Preston says this a lot, is like what you judge, you become. Yes. So if there's parts of ourselves we're judging and exiling and hiding, we become
because all you're doing is like essentially it's a constant stream of thought in your mind is taking over your consciousness.
Yeah, wow. So good. Oh my God. I'm watching time. I like to make sure we keep them around like an hour or so, but I feel like this conversation is like so juicy. Yeah. I'd love to know, what has been your biggest lesson when navigating a woman and how to actually show up for her?
Staying power. Yeah.
Give me more.
Yes. The ability to stay in something is the most powerful asset that we can have as a man. If like we were talking about before, like the feminine mess, and bring this to business too. Like how can you stay in a season of low? How committed, devoted are you to not let it take over? So in relationship, like men tend to want to complete things. Yeah. Like, okay, the mess comes up. Great. Immediately. Okay. When's this going to be over? When's this going to be over? Are we done yet?
I feel like I do that even in medicine ceremonies. When is this going to be over?
Oh my gosh. Like, we're fucking done yet? Yeah. Like, medicine's like, no, bitch. Not yet.
We're done when I stay.
Yeah. I always say that, that like when you wrestle an 800-pound gorilla, the wrestling match is not over when you're done. The wrestling match is over when the gorilla's done. This is like that.
Yeah. Totally.
So how well can I stay in a wrestling match with an 800-pound gorilla? How much capacity do I have? And not even just to be there, but to choose to be there. Like you can be there and like internally kicking and screaming, like, oh, I just want to go. Like that energy is felt. Yeah. And so what I've learned, and a lot with Michelle, is that, I mean, she's a very, very feminine woman, like fully expressed, and she's done the work to get to that point. And so it's required me to step into a different level of staying power and leadership. Yeah. And so what I've learned is that there's just what practices do I get to do, like in my morning breath or in my morning embodiment practices, whatever it is, so that when something comes up in my relationship, I can stay there until it's complete. Not when I think it's complete, when it is complete. Yeah. When the thing decides that it's complete, and that's not even Michelle's thing. Like Michelle just lets things flow through her. Yeah. And so that means that I get to stay with her in it until it's completed.
I remember I used to say, I don't obviously have to say this now, but back in the day I used to say to Wayne, just because you don't have a problem doesn't mean the relationship doesn't have a problem. And he would never get that. He'd be like, oh, I think it's sweet. And I'm like, well, I don't think it's sweet. Like, we need to talk about this, you know?
Yeah.
So it's so big.
Yeah. And so staying power. Okay. So it's that one thing, like when there's conflict or when something comes up, when she's triggered or when I'm triggered or those things. But staying power is actually like your ability to be present through all the things.
Yeah.
From the darkness and the storms to the heights of ecstasy. Because men will want to complete this. They also want to complete sex.
Yeah.
They also want to complete. That's why one of the best ways to practice staying power is aftercare. You know, like if there's foreplay leading up, but the aftercare and sex, like how, like I'd say, like if you ask men honestly, what happens after sex? Like I just kind of want to roll over and like be in my own energy, maybe get up and go get some water. No.
Yeah.
You stay there. If you really truly desire to meet her and to make her feel, you want her to feel your presence, lay with her after sex.
Yeah.
Like breathe with her, speak to her, let her know like what your experience of that, connect with her.
It's funny you say that because that's been a natural byproduct of all the work we've done over the last couple of years. Whereas in the beginning of our relationship, it was like, done.
Yeah.
And like the more connected we've gotten, better the sex has gotten and the better the connection afterwards.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's so funny. You said something before that really sparked my curiosity and I'm trying to think what it was. Oh, it was when you spoke into capacity, right? Because we use that word a lot on this show. But I'd love to hear from a man's perspective, what does capacity mean to you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Capacity is rooted in my ability to say no problem. Like if I can meet a situation and just be like, okay, no problem.
How do you get to that?
Work. Reps, work. Like, so one of the biggest decreases of capacity in men is shame, self-doubt. And so there was a moment in a relationship a couple of years ago where I was like in and out. It was chaotic. And I asked Preston, I said, I get around her and it's just fucking shame monster takes over. And I'm like, what do you do? He's like, stand there, stay in it, stare that monster down. And so when I think about capacity, what I think about is my ability, we can talk about like ability to hold a bigger life and to hold wealth and to hold that. But like, if it's all there and you're scrambling and overwhelmed and chaotic with it and fumbling it around and dropping things, it's not really there.
Yeah.
You're barely hanging on. So capacity is how well can I be a yes to the thing, to whatever it is that my life is giving me. That means the lows, the highs, the middles, the things like the joy, the pleasure, the pain, just be a yes to all of it. And it doesn't mean like roll over and let it kick you.
Yeah.
But it means like, okay, this is the reality. I see it. I'm aware of it. How do I choose to relate to it? And if I don't like it, what do I get to do? If I like it, what do I get to do?
Yeah.
Having a capacity is moving from a reactionary position to a responsive position. Because when your capacity is limited, you are reacting. You're 0 to 100, you're on a switch, on and off. When you have capacity, you have range. So you can go from, the killer or the bad cop, or you can go to the good cop or the joy or the pleasure. Like you have all the things available to you, and you also have breath and space available to you.
Yeah.
So if a situation can be presented to you, and life will do that, and you can say, okay, that moment is so huge. And even in relationships, it's like an engagement breath. Like, okay, that happened, engage. But if you just like engage, tendency is going to be to mess shit up.
100%. And I think it's so important. Like I always say, like capacity it's not about creating more. It's about clearing out so we can hold what's here.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And so I love that you went there with the whole, like, how do I just like hold what's here and be present? Because I think for most of us as women, men think we're craving money, we're craving this, we're craving that, but we really just want the fucking presence.
That, if that's all we said today, that would be enough.
Like legit, like I've said to him so many times, like it's not about the money. It's just how do you hold me?
Yeah.
So I can make money.
Yeah.
I'm so good at making money. What I need is a man who has got that little girl when she's up. And the more that he's gotten that, the more that everything just goes and like our whole life flows so beautifully. Because I know that women hold the spiritual container to a relationship. men hold the physical.
Yeah.
And so it's like, how do we merge them in a way where it feels good
Yeah.
and conducive?
Yeah.
I have a question for you actually on that.
Mm-hmm.
Because I remember in the start of our relationship, it took a while for Bane to trust the oracle, like the side of me that was just like, that's a no. And he'd be like, what? And I'm like, I'm just telling you, like, it's a no. My body's saying no. And he'd be like, oh, and then he'd come back, yeah, that was a no.
You're right. Yeah.
It took him a really long time, but now we have this rule that I believe that both of us have an oracle within us. I believe men have it just as much as women. We're just trained a little bit more, I believe. And so we have this rule inside our relationship is if someone gets the hit that where we're going, it's not it, we have to stop and assess. It doesn't matter how far down the vision we are. If someone's like, oh, the other person has to like at least hear them out.
Yeah.
And usually the one who has the stronger hit, we have to listen to.
Yeah.
And it's a choosing to back that. How do you guys navigate that hit or the, when that comes through?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love the stop and assess that I'm going to start using that. Because we recognize that it's a thing. Like we both are very aware of it and we have conversations about it.
Yeah.
I kind of like, I will, if there's something like I'll feel the energy. Michelle will more feel the thing. Like I'll be like I'm like, babe, what do you think? And I'm like, tap in. What do you think? Like I need your oracle right now. And so it's honoring that both exist and that just because the feminine oracle is tapped in and has a hit, it doesn't mean that your leadership is lacking as a man.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that you're wrong. It just means that there's a higher being, there's a higher power here directing us. And it doesn't mean that she just says, let's honor the hit, honor the thing. And then you said, assess and see what it is. And most of the time it's going to be correct. Yeah.
Like I'll admit there's been times where it's been fear. And so we've gone, okay, cool. In the assessment, oh, actually that was just fear. Cool. Let's keep going. Like, and I think that's where it's really important to talk about it. Yeah. So many people can get misguided with that, right? And so it's like, we've had these, I remember I was like 9 months pregnant with Tiariki, right? Like I was in the full fucking stages of about to have a baby. And I'm running out to a Bane. I'm like, I've got it. And he's like, what? And I'm like, I'm just going to like go and I'll get $100,000 loan and I'll just get that to pay for all my marketing and I'll just hire coaches and they can keep my business running while I'm on maternity leave. And he's like, all right, if that's what you think you should do, let's do that. And I was like, yep, let's go. Anyway, he's like, let's just assess it though first.
Good.
Anyway, we sat down afterwards and we assessed it and I realized that I just had this, it was almost that victim. I didn't want to fall victim to being mother and a businesswoman, right? Because we see so many people who have to sacrifice one or the other.
Yeah.
And so once we actually had that conversation and I was like, actually, it's okay if I'm not so heavy in business right now. Like I'm allowed to have that season.
Yes.
And like I did work very early on and, I wouldn't do that again if I had another baby. But at the same time, it felt right for us of what we were doing. Yeah. And so it was so interesting in just how little hits. Like it was actually my fear that sounded like expansion. Yeah. But it was fear. Like I've done that now later on. Yeah. And I didn't need to go get the loan to do it. However, it took time to be able to go, where are we at and what pieces are moving right now? Yeah. Fear will jump fast.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And I love that you're aware of that because it's so true to unwind that part of it. Yeah. Because once you sit with it for a second, it becomes pretty clear. Yeah. And I love too so Urbane, and that's a perfect example because Urbane, okay, babe. Cool.
He's always like, yep, right on, crazy
let's talk but then he's like, okay, so let's talk about it. Yeah. So he immediately, he welcomed the hit. He welcomed your oracle, said thank you. He honored it, gave it space to exist, and also said, wait, let's put some containment on it and see if it's actually true. Yeah. And that's a beautiful dynamic.
And I think like a lot of people, they go, and I want to bring a highlight to this because, we've talked a lot about how good our relationships are and they've taken work.
Oh yeah.
Like this doesn't just happen. It's like, you know, I remember when we first got together, we sat down and we wrote out like our vision and our values, because we both have this belief that if you've got vision and values, anything can overcome. Because if values are aligned, it's usually the ego that's getting in the way, right? And so we were like, we always do it. Every year we sit down and we work out our vision and values to make sure they're still there, correct, aligned. And in the moments where we forget the vision and the values, that's usually when our shit falls apart. And that's usually when things happen. So I'd love to know, what's the thing for you that steers the ship?
In a relationship?
Yeah.
It's
like
truth.
Truth, yeah.
That's the value. That's it. Like we both established early on that no matter what happens here, even if it means the destruction of us, if it's truth, we're here for it.
Oh, I love that.
And so if that's like every conversation we have. And it took me a minute to get to this point, because I was like, oh my God, there's always something coming up. Like, can't we, like, something like frequently, and not all the time, but like there's phases where it's like, oh, geez, like another,
when
like,
you're in it, you're in
5 days of this, like, and I'm this, and I'm like, it's for truth.
Yeah.
Like there's something that her oracle feels untrue is here. She's desiring in the highest of integrity to get to truth. Yeah. And on the other side of it, it's always there, and it feels good, and we kiss and have sex and make up, and it's amazing. And to get to the point of like, it's a surrender point and it's a devotion point. Yeah. Is that like, okay, no matter what comes up, it is always whatever comes up. It could be with the dog, it could be with us, it could be with money, whatever it is. Yeah. It is always something that's asking for us to find truth in that. And as long as we can remain with that energy, everything's fine.
I love that so much. And I think too, it's so important too, because it's so easy for our ego to want to create all the stories around.
Oh yeah. Like, why are we doing this? Like, what is this? Yeah. And it's that. And then underneath it too is like, it's so easy once you kind of anchor into the truth of it. It's like, it could be about like the laundry, but you're like, what's really going on here? Yeah. You know, it's like, it immediately like bypasses all the bullshit and gets to like, what's the real thing here? Yeah. Like, and just recently we had a thing where I was getting a little hesitant in my leadership, and it felt like she was nagging. Like this was my experience and her experience. And she was just like, step back in. Come on, dude. Just like, we got there and I was like, oh, I see. Like all these little things were just her asking for me to step in. Yeah. And so then I was like, okay, I'll step in. Yeah. It's funny you say that, because I remember this was like maybe 18 months ago. I don't know if you remember, but we were being coached by P on one of the calls, and Ebane and I were in our shit. Yeah. And he was like, it's just one thing after the other. And Preston's like, until you get to the root of it, it'll keep pulling it out. Yeah. Like, and you have to pull the whole fucking root out. Yeah. But most people, this is where they have the power struggle and they fall apart. What would you say to someone who right now is sitting in that bit where they feel like it's just drudgery, like it's just like fucking one thing after the other? Yeah. What would you say to them, whether it be man or woman? I would say that in that, if they're feeling it's one thing after another, their victim and their ego is fully online. And they are, the one thing after another means like, I can't find where I'm right. Like I feel wrong. I feel like I'm doing it wrong. I feel like I'm searching for, I'm looking to be right.
That's so good.
Yeah. And so the thing that whoever it is, man or woman, go ask your partner, acknowledge what's happening. It's been 5 days of shit and I don't understand what's going on. I feel like I can't land. What do you actually need right now? What do you need me to hear, or what do you need me to do right now? Or what needs to be expressed in you that is underneath all this stuff?
So good. So
because it's really like what happens is in those moments, like after sometimes right away, but if it's days and days and days, it ends up being you against him or him against you or you against me. As soon as you can get from it's not you against me, it's you and me against the thing. Yeah. When that shift happens, the whole thing will stop.
Yeah, 100%. I remember like when we did actually like separate for 2 days. Way back when.
Longest 2 days of my life.
Longest 2 days of my life. But we got to this point where I was just like, there was some things I just weren't willing to settle on. And he literally came to me, and at first it was the not good enough, I'm not enough like him. And I was just like, I'm not actually asking for too much. I'm just asking for like presence and this and conviction. Anyway, anyway, once we I was like, I'm not going to buy into I'm too much here. Like I just held that line for myself. I'm like, I'm not buying it. And then he sort of settled in the whole well, fuck, if she's not too much, you could see that this is what was happening. I must not be not enough. She can see that I can hold that.
Yeah.
And he literally came to me and he was just like, whatever it takes. That's literally what he said. He just was I was getting the washing out of the dryer. And it's grabbed my hand and stood me up. And by this stage, we were both 2 days of ugly crying, puffy and gross.
Yeah.
And I just looked at him. And as soon as he looked at me, I knew he was about to say something that was going to change the whole space.
Yeah.
And he's just like, whatever it takes. And they were the only words he used. He's like, and he just held me. And it was just in that moment, I was just like, oh.
Yeah.
6 months later, we got engaged. Whole life has changed.
Yes.
Everything happened. But it's sometimes it takes that point of crumble to get to that. Because we'd spent 5 years 4.5 years prior to that.
Yeah.
Being like, we're good. But we weren't great.
Yep.
And it was the minute that bit happened, it was our whole relationship catapulted.
Yeah.
Relationship, I should say.
There's a whole nother level of devotion.
Yeah.
I'm not going anywhere, and whatever it takes, let's figure this out.
How often do you see that sort of stuff play out?
The lack of whatever it takes?
Or the it's good.
Oh.
But then they're
this is a through line in business and relationships.
Right.
The trap of good enough. So people come from building a business is painful, or doing the work in a relationship is, there can be a lot of pain.
Yep.
And they get to the point where the pain's not there, but their heads are just above water like this. So they're good enough. I got air.
Yeah.
Air is good. Didn't have air 3 months ago. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm here.
Yeah.
All of a sudden my arms are getting tired. I'm sinking back down. And because the good enough is not on the beach, on the lawn chair, drinking the margarita.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
So the work is don't stop at good enough because it's such a trap, because it feels good in comparison to where you were 3 months ago, a month ago, last week.
Yeah.
It's okay. And this was my trap for a long time is that
same
struggle with business. Oh, fuck, panic mode. All hell's breaking loose. My house is on fire. Work. Meditate. Breathe. Whatever. Grind. Don't do that anymore.
Yeah.
Slink right back in.
Yeah, but this is also what creates the feast and famine cycle in business.
100%.
It's exactly the thing that I talk about all the time, because people are like, oh, I'm going to go hard when I'm in survival. But the minute I'm good, it's
Yeah. And survival's addicting.
Yeah. But that's also the addiction to chaos. Let me not make it great.
Yes.
Yeah.
So so people have so long, this was me, so much survival mode that it's my familiar heaven.
Same. I was there too.
I can navigate that shit like a champ, like Lieutenant Dan in the storm. Is that all you got? But give me success, I'm I don't know what to do. Yeah.
But let's talk about that though for a minute, because you and I both sort of come up in the same levels, and we've had to grow businesses from kind of nothing.
Yeah.
I know for myself, I had to grieve the poor broke woman. That was a whole thing, and it's part of the victim as well, right? Mm-hmm. But learning to embody the successful woman.
Yeah.
I'm still learning that.
Yeah.
I'm still learning that. What does that come up, what has come up for you with that, being a man?
It's pretty similar. It's, it's for me, that struggle, that survival mode is an avoidance of the primal masculine responsibility.
Yeah,
it's the primal protector thing, the provider, which, having been saved for the first 15 years of my life 4 times a year, it's that's how I'm going to be successful, is be saved. Right. And so grieving that and getting to the point of accepting the responsibility and stepping into the king archetype or the chief archetype, stepping into that as okay, whatever it takes. There's no one else, this is it. And so understanding that survival mode actually fed me in a way that it made me feel like I was, so men are, the more I do, the more I'm worth. And women too a little bit, but humans, the more we do, the more we're worth. And so survival mode actually feels like doing. It actually feels like I'm creating worth. But in reality, all I'm doing is struggling. And so then it becomes martyrdom. I became a martyr in it. Look at me struggle.
I really hope all my clients and women are listening to this right now, because the same thing happens with women.
Yeah.
So loud.
Yeah. I think for me, I'll speak to myself, is that I was struggling in the hopes that my mom would see me and be here, I'll help you. And so mom, just substitute mom for whatever it is. Clients, girlfriends, whatever. It's just struggle so that someone comes in and is like, here. And so then there's the payoff in that. And so me having to unwind that was the biggest thing in getting to the point. And then there's like energetic practices that are involved, like sitting. Sometimes I do this with my, currently is I sit like holding an axe, like a big axe. And I just sit and like imagine myself just like just being the man that like chops down trees and like the king and the provider, the protector, chop wood, carry water.
Like tapping into that dangerous.
It's cultivate. Yeah. Danger. Yeah. Yeah. And so this has all been part of unwinding that saved me, that, the survival mode is like the thing that's creating my worth, when the worth is actually on the impact, on the showing up. That was a big shift for me. Because for so long, I would years, I would just get on podcasts and I got a TED Talk out of my victim. Like my victim, my victim got me a TED Talk.
Fucking successful victim.
Like, fuck yeah, strong. Like, way to go, dude. But so I got a TED Talk, but the thing is like my victim got me so much. And so it's like, when do I get to let that go and understand that? Like, so I would get on podcasts, I got on a stage and I told my victim story all out of just please see me. Just please see me for this. And like, just please like say you love me, like me. And there's all from victim. And so understanding like that I can tell these stories and I can talk about my past without identifying with it and being that victim and speak to it as like a part of me that built me to who I am is a whole shift in identity.
I love that so much. And I think, for most people, they wouldn't even be able to recognize that piece. But the way that you've shown, put such a light in the different avenues, I think it's really great. I'm even seeing some pieces now where I'm like, oh, it's still there. Like,
It's a sneaky little bastard.
Yeah, mine comes up for me when it's like I've had a busy day at work. And I'm like, well, you can provide or you can do this to obey. And rather than and don't get me wrong, when I'm in my muse, she's on and it just naturally happens. Yeah. But if he doesn't do the thing that I expect, this morning, he didn't buy me a coffee when he was out because he was stressed for time. Yeah. And I was like, he's like, is that all right? Like he looked at me because he's like, if I've got time, I'll get you one. Yeah. Didn't get me one. I was like, no, it's not all right. No, I'm like, but then just noticing those tiny little pieces where it's like, then you make someone else wrong. Yeah. If they don't buy into the victim story. Yeah. Or if they don't give you the fucking thing that you wanted as the victim. Yeah.
Now we're in the drama triangle.
So much so. Oh my God. I've loved this conversation.
Yeah. It's so good.
I feel like we could talk for hours. Yeah. We already have gone over a little, but I'm so loving it. Yeah. But I have one question that I ask every one of my guests that come on this show. And this one is, I feel like, it's going to ring true for a lot of people perhaps, but if this was the last time that anyone were to ever hear you speak on anything, any topic, anywhere in the world, what would be the thing that you would want them to hear?
Wow. Can I say twofold?
Yeah.
Okay. So it starts with allow yourself to be a beginner. And within that, be ridiculously compassionate with yourself. Yeah. Self-love is the answer to all the things that you ever want, desire, anything that, if you're not getting anything, there's something about yourself that you're not loving.
I love that. And I just want to caveat, because I know that that's not surface level self-love.
No.
What do you define self-love as?
Self-love is full acceptance of all parts, versions of you that have ever existed. And the most rock solid trust in source that can possibly exist. Just knowing that we are one and all the kind of connectivity that exists. If you accept all of you and completely trust your path, yourself, your ability, your capability, your capacity, your staying power, all the things we've been talking about, that's self-love.
I love that so much. Yeah. And it takes a whole level of responsibility for that too.
Oh, fuck yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a lot of legit stand in front of a mirror and have a conversation with yourself frequently.
Naked.
Yeah. Yes. The level up is naked. Yeah.
Oh, this has been so good. So for all of the women that are listening that like, my husband needs to work with you now, where can they find you?
The best place is Instagram.
Yeah.
It's at Sam Gibbs Morris. That's Gibbs.
Yeah.
Also, the website is samgibbsmorris.com.
Okay, we'll put it in the show notes.
Great.
I'll have all the details.
Awesome.
But thank you so much for coming on and sharing your wisdom. It's always like every conversation I have with you, I feel like I learned something new. So
thank you. And thank you so much for having me on the show. You know, being that we've lived in the same ecosystem for many, many years, like it's so cool to witness you. And, you know, like we see each other from a distance here in Australia on a call and like, you know, I'll admit it, like I put you on a little bit of a pedestal when I first came like around. I was like, oh my God, Case. But then getting to know you, it's such a fucking deep honor to be walking this path with you and to be doing the things we're doing together. Like you are just such a fucking amazing human being, an amazing woman. And I love you so much.
I love you too. You gotta make me cry. Yeah, the feeling is completely mutual. Like,
thank you.
And I think I've shared it with so many people, just how much I love you and I respect you as a man. Because the thing that I love the most about you is you are a stand for all humanity, not just for men.
Yes, that's true.
You're a stand for everyone.
Yeah.
And I think it shines through everything that you do. So thank you for who you are.
Thank you so much. Thank you for that reflection.
You're so welcome. Embodied